Hello, fellow investors. Welcome to another episode of Ritter on Real Estate, where we teach you how to passively invest like a pro. My name is Kent Ritter, and I'm your host. And my guest today is Max Fisch. He is the founder of Real Estate Project Solutions. Max started out flipping and wholesaling in sorry, looking up. I'll start that one over.
Philadelphia.
Philly. I couldn't remember if it was Philly or Pittsburgh when I got to it.
Technically, I started South Jersey, but yeah,
gotcha.
Philadelphia market.
All right. I'll clap so my editor knows where to cut. So my guest today is Max Fisch. Max is the founder of Real Estate Project Solutions. Max started out in the Philadelphia market, flipping houses and doing some wholesaling. And as his business scaled up, he recognized the need to build out a team. And in order to do that, Max decided to leverage virtual assistants, and he started Real Estate Project Solutions. I think first service in his own business, and then now he's offering it as services to other real estate investors. So it's really virtual assistants catering to the real estate industry. So excited to hear about how you're helping people scale up. Max, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Ken, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the real estate business a while back. I was a young guy, early 2000s, and I was actually doing mortgages, in college. A friend of mine had brought me into that business, doing appraisals and seeing values. I had seen a property that a builder was selling in a development, locally, and I called them up and asked them the price. I knew it was a good price, and that ended up being my first, my first flip. It was a very simple paint and carpet. My budget was, 20 grand, 25 grand, something like that, and that was kind of the beginning for me. And the business, the real estate business hasn't changed too much, but with technology and things, obviously it's evolved.
Yeah. Awesome. So you started out just a single flip, and then as your business grew, I mean, kind of tell us where you are, or maybe tell us, when you got to the point where you started saying, hey, I need some help. I've got to start building out a team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I'm sure you do, and many of your listeners do as well. We're listening to a lot of podcasts and seeking information and ideas. And, I again, had a lot of experience, with the closing process and with title and all of that. But I've always been a big marketing guy, and really started out direct mail, way back when. I tell people sometimes that Facebook wasn't really a thing when I started, and that kind of blows people's minds. But, I think I realized I needed a team when I listened to a podcast, or read a book or article or something, and I realized I was doing everything. I was wearing all of the hats because I had a really difficult time, I guess, kind of delegating. Kind of had that disease of thinking only I could do everything. I think that's really where it started. And so I started looking to hire folks, and got a real education, traditional hires, W-2 employees and stuff. And one thing led to another, but VAs ultimately was the best choice for me, for my business at that time, and it still is today.
Gotcha. So how did you, I guess, you started hiring folks as W-2s, and then do you still have those W-2 employees, or did you make a switch to totally using VAs, or what was the reason to say, W-2s aren't the right way to go? I need to hire more of the VA approach.
Yeah. So that's a great story. A lot of folks that know me have heard it. But to make the story as short as possible, I again was focused on marketing, and I recognized that a quick, easy, and inexpensive channel was cold calling, or cold calling texting. I kind of lumped them into the same category. So I went out, put out an ad, and tried to hire people locally. Again, at this point, either wasn't fully aware of VAs, wasn't on the radar, wasn't, whatever.
Sure.
And I started hiring people, and I ended up at the peak with 8 full-time people in my office. And again, based in Philadelphia. So where my office is, I'm right outside the city limits. I don't like payroll tax, don't tell the tax man. But we, where we are, the candidates were all, obviously younger people, because we were, it's like $10-12 an hour job. Wasn't, it's not like a high paying gig. It's pretty simple. But I caught people sleeping in their cars. There was one kid, Amaron. I caught him sleeping in his car. There was, another girl that she was like causing problems in the office with others. But the real catalyst was when I caught a couple of them fist fighting in the women's bathroom in the office.
Oh my gosh.
Can't make it up, man. It got to the point where the other people in the office building were like, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
so you just weren't attracting the right type of talent.
Well, I think that it was a combination of that. It was a combination of my inexperience, and quite honestly, I wasn't a manager. I wasn't, I'm like a real estate sales guy. So I think all of those things combined, I certainly don't look at myself and think, well, it wasn't my fault, or, at the end of the day, it's my business. And so sure. When that happened, a buddy of mine said, try VAs. And that was really what got that started.
Gotcha.
And it's, it's all the traditional issues of W-2 employees.
Yeah. So you made the switch to, you say, okay, we're not going to do the W-2 route. I'm going to switch to virtual assistants. And where did you find the virtual assistants, or how are you identifying virtual assistants? Are there certain countries that you look for, or certain things that you're trying to identify as you look for your VAs?
Yeah. So we have, as a company, we have matured, quite a bit.
Sure.
When I first started, a buddy of mine said, try VAs. I, like most people, looked to, Craigslist and Fiverr and, all these kinds of places. And I think I went through, I want to say 3 people, and I got very, very lucky. I got this one young lady who saw my vision, and she actually helped me develop different SOPs for hiring. And we just kind of built, little by little, brick by brick. And she's still with me today. And, that was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And it took us between like a year and a half to really kind of iron things out and get everything the way that we wanted. But ultimately what I realized was, I didn't know what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And, like everything else, you want it to be easy, at least I do. And it never is as easy as I'd like it to be. And, now we have a really, really well-oiled machine, and we have a very specific process for every, for hiring, for vetting, for training, for the mm-hmm. management, all of it.
That's fantastic. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've realized through my own experience with virtual assistants is when I first started, it really was just thinking that I had to define every process, and I had to have everything figured out before I could really bring them on into that. And I think, like you said, it sounds similar. What I've realized is, there can be a lot of value in having them really help you create the process and then document the process along the way. Because, we just don't have time to sit down and figure out every single process and document every single process. And so that was a big change for me. And it sounds like that was a kind of a change for you, or really something that was eye-opening for you as this young lady. It sounds like she was really really able to help you get your processes down on paper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, I wasn't, it wasn't like I was some kid who had no commitments outside of work, and I, had nothing better to do. I mean, I still had to do, I still had, I don't know, at the time, probably 3 or 4 real estate, flips going on, rehabs going on.
Hmm.
Still had, my 2 or 3 acquisitions guys, whatever I had at the time, doing their thing. And that was always really my big issue. It wasn't so much not knowing what to do or how to
Right.
do it, just the bandwidth,
Right. Yeah.
you
Well, I
can
think
only
that's
do so many things.
and I think that's a problem we all face as entrepreneurs, right? Is you can only do so many things. And at a certain point, you have to be willing to give up some of those tasks, right? And so I know a couple things I wanted to ask you about is really kind of along those lines. So how do you identify the tasks that you should be owning as the entrepreneur, and then on the flip side, the tasks that you should be giving up and you should be outsourcing? Like, are there, now that your business has matured, you've been doing this for a long time, maybe the easiest way to say this is like, what are the first tasks that you start to offload, or that you would recommend people start to offload?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When we, depending on what the client's looking for, when we do that initial engagement, we have a full questionnaire. We really take a consultative approach, because what I have found is that everybody's business is a little bit different. And the things that you might want to offload to a VA are going to be different from what I want to offload, for the simple fact that, you have your strengths and I have mine.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, what I would say to someone is the tasks that you want to retain are going to be the extremely high value stuff, the sensitive, type of stuff. You want to be really careful who you have, like, doing your taxes. I talk to people all the time. Oh, I gave, my VA all my passwords to everything, and I haven't heard from them for 3 days. And it's like, what were you thinking? Right. There might be a time, but I don't think that that's like day 2.
Yeah.
So again, everybody's a little bit different, but generally speaking, I would say, the lower level tasks are the stuff that you got to get, you got to get off your plate first.
Right. I mean, are there certain tasks that you've seen give the most leverage? Like, I don't know if it's just email management, calendar management, if it's, gosh, I don't know. Are there things where you've seen it's like, wow, like these are always ones where people, maybe holding on to them, and by giving them up, they get a ton of leverage?
Yeah, I don't know if I can point to anything specifically, because again, everybody's a little bit different. For some folks, it might be less about the ROI and more about, the time freedom aspect. Just everybody's so different. I think that, that some of the stuff that we see quite regularly, or that we see consistently, is going to be things like lead gen, calendar management. I definitely think, and then like the really mundane stuff. I mean, something as simple as like answering the phone,
Mhm.
things like that. But again, it really goes back to what the focus is. For me, the focus was less about ROI and really about, about kind of the time freedom and efficiency aspect of building a team and handing things off.
Mhm.
Only later down the road did I really start to take that focus on, the ROI piece.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the first things that you offloaded?
So once we got everything, again, let's say it took us a year to get everything really tightened up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once we did that, my going into it, my focus was the lead gen. That's what I really wanted to offload. I started replacing all of the people that were doing the cold calling, and just kind of worked backwards. Today it's, I have a project manager, an acquisitions guy, a dispositions guy, and everyone else, even my bookkeeper, is outsourced, because it just doesn't make sense for me to have all those people, all those bodies, not only from a cost perspective, but also,
Mhm.
I can hire, I don't know, 2 or 3 people, maybe depending on the role, for the cost of one in-office W-2 person, with the payroll taxes and the workers' comp and all the stuff that comes along with that.
Yep.
It's just much more streamlined and much more efficient.
And are all the people you're hiring, are they all foreign, or are they from other countries, or are some of them US based?
So some of them are U.S. based. In my business, it really, my bookkeeper, for example, she's in Florida.
Mhm.
I needed somebody with very specific skill set. They have
Sure.
to obviously know the U.S. tax code. They have to know what they're doing. So that's a kind of a unique hire. Generally speaking, a lot of people, a lot of quote unquote competitors, they're looking at the Philippines and, as I say to folks, trying to squeeze a square peg in a round hole. We hire globally. We even do some like traditional, headhunting recruiting, where we're
Mhm.
putting physical bodies in people's offices if that's the need, but that's not our core business. It is foreigners. But if you need a, bilingual, for example, there's very few Filipinos that are bilingual. So we took a focus early on to look, to look essentially everywhere.
Globally. Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So as you so now with the business, now that you're with real estate project solutions, now you're helping people, figure out how to find leverage in their own business. Um, I know some of the things that I struggled with bringing on virtual assistants were just around, how do you manage them? How do you manage virtually, and how do you set up expectations, and then kind of what are the systems that you can use? So I'm curious if you might have some tips around that for people as they're getting started. So like you get your VA hired, right? And then kind of what do you do next? How do you make sure that they're actually able to perform? And I think it's kind of a two-way street, right? Like, are you giving them what they need, but then how do you make sure you're getting what you need out of them?
Yeah, you make an excellent point. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we see people miss often. They say, "Oh, my VA, Johnny or Sally, he or she, couldn't do this or missed that or didn't do this," and then you find out that the directions were, I need you to do this. I need it done this afternoon. Go. And it's like, well, what did you expect to have happen?
Mhm.
So I think when you bring someone on, right? First of all, I've never seen anybody take the amount of time they really should, to properly set up the task list and find the right person. And most folks they'll interview until they find somebody that's good enough, and that's what they go with. And it's understandable, right? I probably would have done the same thing a while ago. Um, and then, once you find that person, you got to then go through the training and get them all trained up. And then, you really have to sit down and work on, the SOPs and the very specific tasks so that they can complete the stuff the way you want it done. So it's if you really break it down, it's extremely intense in terms of, you can't just, like bookkeeping, for example, you can't just say, go do my books. I mean, you could, right? But if even if the person knows the process, they know the software, the real estate business, for example, we book expenses to different properties. Well, how is someone to know that if you don't teach them or show them?
Mhm.
There's a number of softwares and different things that we use, but we just use checklists and like basically have our team follow the SOPs that way.
So you're creating a lot of step-by-step checklists for different things that need to be done. Like, give us an example of maybe one or two.
Yeah. For example, let's just say lead gen, where I started. So, there's a good portion of our business at this point is lead gen. So, cold calling, texting, different things like that. So if we're bringing on a person and we're managing them on behalf of the client, we're going to do a general training for that person, but then we're going to sit down and figure out how the client wants us to approach the prospect, right? What's the script? And we go through that. How do they want the leads delivered, right? And we go through that. literally breaking everything down to very
Mhm.
simple, if this happens, then do this. And then of course there's a lot of, you know, um, uh, review, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? We'll let them go for a day, and then we'll see how they did, and then we
Yeah.
tweak and course correct, and it's a process, because most people don't figure things out on the first attempt, right? At
Sure.
least I don't. So
Sure.
there's a lot of that.
Gotcha. So let's break it down like just week to week. How should we be managing a virtual assistant, week to week? What does the cadence look like? What kind of contacts should folks be having? Check-ins, things like that.
So I think that it really depends on your personal preference. There are some people that are clients of ours, for example, who are very hands-on, others that are very hands-off. I am one of those people that believes that more communication is always better. And, yeah, I might repeat myself 4 times, but at least I ensure there's no way that there's, any kind of miscommunication.
Mhm.
I think if you, well, let me take a step back. So we in our business, we have a fully managed, solutions, and then we just do placements. So, to start from the top, it's going to depend on whether or not someone wants to kind of bring this in-house or have us do the management. But week to week is going to be, we get that initial task list. We determine the deliverables or the goals for the client. And essentially we're going to have the VA put together a, kind of like a daily routine. And then we're going to check in with that individual, have a whole management team. There's like, I think 21 of them now, coaches, trainers, operations. So if somebody needs more training, we'll give them additional training. If
Mhm.
someone's, not delivering the leads or saying the right thing, it might just be a simple coaching issue. And then of course we use KPIs, right? So everything, all the decisions are made by the numbers, right? There's no, there's no guesswork. It's not subjective. It's hey, you made the mark or you didn't. And that's the best way to bonus as well. So it's important to set this stuff up for future issues as well.
Gotcha. So if you're managing the team, say you're managing a VA internally. So essentially you're working with the client to identify what that task list is. So I think where people can go wrong, right, as you said, is not being specific enough about what's needed, and not writing that down, and not having I found that you need a very step-by-step type of list, right? A very, very step-by-step instructions. So not having enough detail, essentially, then you're managing, it sounds like, daily to that list. And then you're reviewing the outcomes. So you have somebody that's reviewing the outcomes, and then you're able to kind of tweak and modify from there. But it sounds like you're engaging with the VA daily. Is that right?
Absolutely. So if we're handling all of the management for the client, we're making sure that they're working. We're making sure that they're clocking in when they're supposed to clock in. I mean, it's, every aspect of a typical W-2 hire
Mhm.
is very much the same. It's just, this is a contractor relationship, and they happen to be working remotely.
Yeah.
That's the only real difference. But everything else, yeah, you absolutely have to treat them the same, because people will, not everybody, but there's bad apples everywhere, and people will try to game game the system, and
Sure.
we hope to alleviate that by doing a lot of that front end prep and making sure we get the right person initially. But
Sure.
you want to make sure that people are doing a good job, especially if it's for a client, not say for my business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious of this topic of like getting your team to own their own role. So explain what that means to me.
Yeah, so we try to establish a culture where everybody everybody has their roles and responsibilities, either, again, for my real estate business, for a client's company, maybe it's a management, a role or management personnel. But we want them to act as if it's their business, right? That little piece. So as an example, my HR manager, I want her to own the HR department, and the 4 women in that department, as if that's her little business. And we've managed to do that by creating incentives, and then also very specific benchmarks, right? So they have a very specific number of people they have to interview every month. Right? They have a very specific number of people we want to attempt to hire every month. But I don't want to just hire everybody. And, so you get into these kind of detailed KPIs, key performance indicators, whereby if everything goes right, then the company benefits, the clients benefit, she benefits typically through additional compensation. But because we're focused on culture and having her own that, it's almost like if she does what she knows is best for that department, for her little company, then everything else just kind of works itself out, right?
Sure.
And that's something that we started fairly recently. I'd say like in the last year or so, year and a half, and it's been really interesting to see how people treat their role when they truly feel like they own it, right? As opposed to just coming in, clocking in, doing going through the motions and then going home. We find people doing a lot of they're working the extra hour, one day a week or something, different stuff like that, because they really want to, they want to have the best outcome they can, for the company. So it's
absolutely
been really exciting.
So you've been able to get people to own their role, it sounds like, by one, just the culture and setting up that sense of ownership and this idea that they do have ownership of their own role, but also by being able to create, sounds like, clear benchmarks and clear metrics on what does success look like for them, right? So then they understand what they're trying to achieve, right? There's no ambiguity there. Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be clear.
That's great. That's great. It sounds like that's been successful as well. It sounds like you said people are putting in the extra time, and you really have been able to change that culture. So I think that's exciting. As we're thinking about things, I know you've had a lot of experience in real estate, a lot of experience working with different VAs at this point. Wondering, as people are trying to onboard, VAs, people are trying to manage an outsourced business. Are there some technologies or systems that you can recommend that to people as they try to set up their own structure?
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. I think there's a lot of different tools, for every aspect of a business at this point. Well, as an example, I can tell you what we've done. So we recently got a piece of software that allows, so we advertise, well, free and paid. We're posting job openings on, something crazy, like almost 90 different websites, some like just insane number. And I don't mean like just going to ZipRecruiter and they happen to syndicate. I mean like physically going out. So what we would end up with was all these resumes coming in by email to the one young lady's email from all over the place. So we get this piece of software, allows everything to go into one database, and then from there we can we can search it. We can categorize stuff. We can communicate with people at a later date. We can, it just allows us to be, a lot more efficient. So that's like one example. Something as simple as a payroll solution, that has been a really big help with automating, the actual process of getting people paid and not having to spend a lot of time there. I'm trying to think. My sales guy, for example, giving him a CRM specific to his role was a really big help for him. So you can look at every aspect of a business and find a piece of software. But I'd say for your listeners, there's some great pay solutions. World Remit, Remitly, Wise. These are much better than, for example, PayPal. And then you want to have some type of software like a Time Doctor or something like that is essentially like a virtual a clock in type of tool.
Yeah. Time clock.
And time. There you go.
Punch
Thank
clock.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to do like screenshots and stuff like that, so you can keep an eye on folks. So those are two examples of very basic things that you want to make sure that you have in place, if for no other reason that people know you keep an eye on things. But yeah, I mean, you could go broke on software, and some of it's great and some of it's just total overkill. But yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff out there, and we have a lot of resources that we share with clients in that regard, for sure.
Sure. So Max, just as we wrap things up here, what are some lessons that you can share with the listeners around just your experiences and, managing VAs, hiring VAs, and kind of making the process work? Like, help us avoid some of your mistakes.
Yeah. So I go back to the analogy I always use is painting. So I have a friend of mine, he wants to sell his house. His wife loves to paint. So he says, honey, we're going to paint the house. And she runs down and grabs the paintbrush and the paint can and starts painting the wall. And that's okay. And you can do that and it'll look nice. And it's got a fresh coat of paint. In reality, what you should do is you should spend, 80%, 90% of the time prepping the wall so that it's perfect in every way. No dents, no nail pops, no funky tape, no peeling, all of that. Natural painting is like the very last part, and it represents such a small amount of time as it relates to the entire project. Mm-hmm. That most people are just totally shocked. So I say that, when I relate that to this business, what I'm trying to get at is the fact that most folks will go out and like I said, interview a handful of people, hire the first person that works, get started, and then be totally shocked 6 months in when that person disappears, doesn't work out, or whatever. And the reason why is because they should have spent considerably more time on the prep, right? Mm-hmm. On identifying the role, making sure it's a good fit, vetting this person, all of that kind of stuff. And that's the value that we bring. So, to answer your question directly, spend way more time, on the preparation, making sure that you got the right role, the role outlined, the right person, all that kind of stuff. The other thing I would say that I think is really important is the training aspect. There's never enough training. You can always train more, hands down. And then the third thing, to avoid mistakes that we've made, I learned this from a residential developer here in Philly a long time ago, and I wish I'd have put it to use much earlier on in my business, in all aspects of my business. And that is slow to hire, quick to fire. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, just like a contractor, just like any other area of your business, if your VA is not working out, if they're causing problems, if they're not getting the job done, whatever it is, what's best for everybody involved is just cut them loose, part ways amicably, and find someone else, because it, in my experience, never gets any better. Mm-hmm. So those are the three things I could, three pieces of advice I could, give your listeners that I think will probably help to avoid, 80% of the issues that they could potentially face rather than making the mistakes that I made and learned the hard way.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that feedback because, or those lessons, because I think that you're right on. It's like the painting analogy is good. You should spend all the time prepping the wall. You need to put the work in up front. And I can say the first time that I hired a VA a couple of years ago, I just didn't have the processes in place yet to really make them successful. And it didn't really work out. I didn't get what they didn't get the direction they wanted. I didn't really get what I wanted. And it was really because I didn't have the systems in place yet to be able to do that. Now, the second time around, I brought a couple of VAs on. It's much different because we have a much more defined model, much more defined business. We're able to give them more specific roles, and just more oversight to be able to give them, I think, those resources and the training. So I think what you said, and just I think a better hiring process. I went through on the front end kind of a 3-step process just to kind of see who would stick with me through the process to want to get to the end. And I thought that was really helpful because you ask people to fill out a form and half of them won't do it. It's like, well, is that the type of person that you're going to want? You're going to want working for you. I mean, I think that mindset's going to follow through. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. So take time. I like that, to hire slow and fire fast, or some variation of that term. And I think that makes a ton of sense for people. I think if you bring on the right people. I mean, I personally, everybody has different opinions. I personally really like personality tests because I think it gives insight into more than just their resume, right? And kind of how they think. And you got to fit the right person to the right role too, I think is really important. And so I like to use personality tests to try to fit that and understand people's personality. And so I think that's great. So, spend more time prepping, right? Including having your systems in place to bring the VA in, spend the time to train them. So there's a lot of work on the front end, right? Hire the right people, a lot of work on the front end, more than you're probably prepared to want to put in, right? As the business owner, you have a lot of other stuff to do. So you got to free up that time. But I think what you're telling us all is that's going to pay off. It's going to pay off by good results. And you're not going to be turning people over, which really is one of the most costly things in any business, right? Is that turnover process and having to bring new people on. So exactly. Message well heard to spend the time on the front end and get it right, and take the time to treat your VA like you would any other employee, right? You're not going to bring in a W-2 employee and think that, they don't need any training or any resources to get it done. So I think you got to think the same way about your virtual assistants.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, Max. Well, I appreciate you coming on and all the info you've shared. Before I let you go, I want to take you through our keys to success round. I've got 4 questions I want to ask you. The first one is, if you were, so a lot of what we focus on the show is real estate investment, right? And I think the virtual assistant piece is interesting because it just allows us to scale and get bigger. So there's definitely a kind of a tangential connection there. But getting back to our investments, if you were going to invest with somebody else, you're going to make an investment into a deal somebody had, and you could only ask them one question. What is that one question that you would want to ask them?
Ooh, if I was investing with them, one question, I think I think my initial thought is I would say I'd want them to tell me about the worst situation that they've ever had or been involved with another investor, and how they addressed that issue, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that would help me to understand, kind of what they've experienced, and yeah, I think that's where I would go. Tell me about the worst interaction you've ever had with an investor, and how did you address it?
Gotcha. That's a good one. What are you most proud of in your career?
Ooh, honestly, I feel like I'm just barely getting started. So that's a difficult question for me. I think the fact that I'm able, not the real estate business too, but specifically the VA business, the fact that I'm able to provide for folks. We don't have a lot of turnover. I hear people tell me on a daily basis, that they're able to buy a car because of the stability with our company, or change their life. I had an employee say that they named their refrigerator after us, which I thought was kind of funny, but That meaningful impact on people's lives, I think, is probably what I'm most proud of at this point.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. You're definitely making an impact. What is a book that everybody should read?
Wow. That's a good question. I think I would, I think I would probably look at some kind of basic sales book, like a Zig Ziglar or something like that. I think back to the stories of him going door to door and doing the selling, and just the adversity that he faced made me, when I read the book, some of his books, think about how my problems are not really that big or that significant in comparison. So I think like a real basic sales or psychology type of book.
Gotcha. All right. And then lastly, what is your number one key to success?
I don't know that there's one, but I think it's treat it, golden rule, treat everybody the way that you would want to be treated. And that's, clients, customers, employees. This is a small space, the real estate business. If you think you're going to do something nasty to somebody and it's going to be kept a secret, you're kidding yourself. So no, I think you gotta treat everybody the way you want to be treated. And that goes, again, across the board.
Yeah, good lesson for business and good lesson for life. So Max, before we let you go, if folks want to learn more about real estate project solutions, learn more about what you're doing, how can they get a hold of you?
The website, realestateprojectsolutions.com. They could enter their information there. Any, socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, any of that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty loose about, giving my time and my contact info. So, quite honestly, people can reach out, and, I'm happy to get on the phone with people and talk to people. I love this stuff. I love talking about it. And it's always cool to hear somebody's story and hear about what other people are doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Max. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and helping us scale up with VAs. And we wish you a great rest of the day.
I appreciate that, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.